to primarily faculty get geared up for our first session. And I guess we're ready to announce that our first session is going to be delayed by one start, that we'll be starting in October rather than August. So it'll reduce the number of classes that we do in the fall. We have, we have 5 classes on the schedule, so we're going to do 3 foundations, accounting, econ, and management, and then we're also going to do management 5362 and finance 5200. Now, Matthew has been working with us on the schedule, and I think I have that right. But it's subject to, I guess, change still, but I don't think so. You know, I think we're pretty much there. We're starting a little light, but it builds quite a bit. So in the future, there'll be many more classes. We start adding in more core courses, more electives, et cetera. So today we want to make sure we just get comfortable with every aspect about doing the 7-week class. We're going to have 6 starts. The first one will be October 23rd. I have a sheet here I can pass out. In fact, I have plenty of extras. As I was telling Barry, I kind of stuttered on the copying machine. This shows all the start dates that we have for the first 2 years. It still shows an August start date, so you can disregard that.
Is everything exactly it is, but pushed up 7 weeks, or are there?
Well, this is just the start dates. It doesn't have the classes in it.
Okay.
But to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't shift everything. So I've been working with Matthew Holston. He's been on several conference calls. First time I've had the opportunity to meet him was about
Nick, do you have any more of
10
these?
or
I know you
15
made like
days.
112.
Yeah, plenty more here.
Perfect, thank you so much.
So without further ado, I think we're going to turn this over to Matthew and, I'm sorry.
Caroline.
Caroline. And they'll kind of tell you a little bit about themselves and go over the agenda for the day, and we'll get going.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nick. Appreciate it. My name's Matthew Postins. As Nick said, I'm an assistant director for academic services at AP. I've actually worked with AP for nearly 8 years now. It'll be 8 years in August. So I've been with the company for quite some time, and I've worked with programs in business and nursing and in education, but right now I'm primarily in charge of the different business programs that we serve around the country. I've worked with faculty like you to help take their courses into the accelerated space, whether you're already teaching some in the accelerated form or whether you haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. Part of my job, as Nick said, is to help get you comfortable with the idea of moving into the accelerated online space. So a lot of what we're going to talk about are strategies to do that. I envision this as a discussion. I want you guys to give me feedback. If you hear something that you don't like, feel free to chime in. And we're going to demonstrate a little technology today that I think might be helpful to you as you're thinking about making the move to the accelerated space, and talk about some other aspects as well. So let Caroline introduce herself.
Hi, good morning. I'm Caroline Vasquez. I'm Assistant Director of Academic Services for the international arena. So until January, I've been assisting universities that we have in Colombia, Peru, South Africa, recently UK. And so like Matthew, my work is to help you feel successful in bringing this course online, in accelerating, in supporting online learning. So online learning, many of us have been teaching for decades, and we feel very comfortable in helping students succeed, but then suddenly they put us in a new medium and we say, oh, wait, they're changing the rules now. Because yes, it is still teaching and it is still learning, but there are some new tricks that we're going to have to incorporate into our toolbox, in our teaching toolbox. My background is in education, so I have a master's and a PhD in education. I'm finishing hopefully soon the dissertation. You know, you both know how easy that is. From Texas A&M University. Before joining AP, I was heading instructional development at UT in Houston, UT Health. And on math, I've actually been primarily focused on education programs and science, health-related programs. So I'm here to help you. I've been working a lot in Canvas. So all the international universities are in Canvas. So I've done this a lot of times, and hopefully I will assist you to make it easy, challenging, and engaging for you and for the students. And it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Just wondering if we could go around the room and just have everybody introduce themselves.
Cami Hunt, ABC Engaged Outreach.
Okay.
I'm Stuart Thomas, the Associate Dean of the School of Business.
Cecilia Locklear, MBA Coordinator.
Nick Arena, MBA Program Director.
Rick Crandall, Teach Management.
Charles Shum, Assistant Professor of Management.
Lydia Gunn, Professor of Economics.
Barry O'Brien, Dean of the School of Business.
Mohammed Rahman, I teach finance.
Cliff Mensa, I teach economics.
John Parnell, Management Professor.
Richard Kim, I teach business study and quantitative methods.
Chris Inwoods, Marketing Management International.
Joy Fuquay, Director of Systems Ed.
Terry Lockley, Instructional Design, Mr. Sid.
Alvin Butler, LMS Administrator.
Him.
You should probably have to introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Vishwa Kairala. I'm a faculty of economics and quantitative methods. So I teach both the MBA and as well as undergraduate.
Good. And Caroline and his man.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys.
I'm sorry, I borrowed that from you.
And we're gonna pass around a little sign-up sheet, and if you could just sign up and if you can also, besides your name, your email, that would be great, because as we develop other workshops, we can directly invite you and you join, you know, as you please.
So I wanted to ask, how many of you have taught online to this point? So most everybody in the room. How many of you have taught in a 7-week format online, 100% online? So a little fewer of you. Okay. So for those, can I borrow this board? Is that
Sure.
Okay? Is that okay?
Sure.
For those of you, as we think about making this transition into 7-week courses, what are the things that concern you about making that transition? It can be anything from your own concerns about building the courses to the concerns you have about the students you may be teaching.
Assignments, getting the assignments in that amount of time,
Okay.
and still hold the quality of the,
In terms of the students?
yeah.
What else?
Communication with the academic coaches.
Okay. Anybody else? Can't be the only two things you're concerned about.
Well, the new LMS.
No, okay,
Yeah.
that's perfectly legitimate concern. Yeah. Yes.
How to put the courses and materials into that fast 7 weeks.
Okay, so accelerating content.
Yes, yeah, and still maintain the quality.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, it's actually a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to leave those up on the board as sort of our guiding principles today, and we have an agenda, obviously, but I want this to be flexible, so if we're having a conversation about something and it doesn't speak to you as a group, let's talk about what direction we might want to go in. But we are actually going to start with the acceleration of courses. After that, we'll move into a demonstration, a participatory demonstration with some technology that we could make available to you through some partnerships we have with VoiceThread and Zoom. And then we'll take a break after that and we'll move into the second part of our session. So that, we'll take it started. And clicker, so do you mind?
No, I don't mind at all. I'll sit here.
So, if you don't mind, I'm going to stand off to the side here for a few minutes. So we're going to talk a little bit about course acceleration today. Definition, student workload, which is an important part of that, and our design model at AP, where it's actually an acronym where we talk about the different things that you're going to want to consider as you take your course from full term to half term. And one thing I'll say is that everybody's course is going to be different in terms of the things that you prioritize and the things that are important to you for students to learn. So don't think of this as a one-size-fits-all sort of thing. Think of this as a foundation for you to build the course that you believe is going to speak to your students, is going to challenge your students, and that your students are going to get the most out of. So let's consider the question for a minute. What do you think course acceleration is? How would you define it?
We're the same in a shorter period of time.
Okay.
Which means the same amount, additional effort proportional to the reduced time.
I would agree with that. Anybody else?
More efficient learning and communication.
Okay. I would agree with that as well. And when you think about this concept of moving to the 7-week model, we kind of talked about some broad concerns. Are there specific concerns that you have aside from the rigor of the content in your course? Yes.
Just a comment. Yesterday we met as a group, the registrar and everything, and these classes all will begin on a Monday.
Okay.
And we've made it clear to the bursar and everything else that students will be dropped if they don't pay by the end of the working day, 1 day in advance. So we think it's crucial that the courses absolutely begin on that Monday when there's just 7 weeks.
Right, absolutely.
But there won't be any of these people adding the class or anything. They're going to be in there when that first Monday starts.
Okay.
So that might help some.
Okay. So we're going to try to address some of those concerns here in the next few minutes. And one thing that I'll direct you to in your folder, if you look in the if you look on the right-hand side, it should be the last 2 pages on the right-hand side of your folder. So one of those is a blank course map. And we actually have a digital version if you're looking for more of a digital version. I'll make those available to you after we're done here. But this is a blank course map, and I highly recommend that anybody, if you're thinking about going to the 7-week format, especially if you haven't done it before, this is a great tool to kind of help you plan what your course will look like in that format. And I like these questions up here at the top. What thinking or behavior changes on behalf of your students 2 years out as a result of taking your course are most important to you? And what behaviors or thinking would you like to see out of your students? How would you like to see them demonstrate mastery? You have your learning objectives. Obviously, you have your alignment with AACSB standards and those sorts of things, and those are all going to be a part of your course. But these are kind of those more layman things. What are the really core things that you want your students to get out of the course after they're done, 1-2 years down the road? Those are the things that you should think about, seriously in the 7-week model. that'll allow you to build that foundation that you can build your content around and that your students can build their experience around. This is working. Of course, depends on the operator. So we talked about workload a minute ago, and all of the courses here are 3 credit hours, all the core courses. And
We have
everything
one
like that.
foundation
The
that's
foundation
four.
is 4. So in talking about the balance of workload as it pertains to an accelerated course and the rigor being the same and the amount of work being the same, so a lot of what we subscribe to is that Carnegie unit, which is 1 hour of classroom or direct faculty instruction each week for approximately 15 weeks, and 2 hours of out-of-class student work each week for approximately 15 weeks. So if you think about that over the course of a 15-week in-the-seat course, that's going to come to 45 hours per credit hour. For a 3 credit hour course, that's going to be approximately 130 hours, or 135 hours, as you can see here. For a 3 credit hour course, that'd be 135 total hours of work for that student in the classroom and on their own. So for a 7-week course, the expectation is that they're going to do the same work in your 15-week course. The expectation is that they're going to spend approximately the same amount of time, depending upon their learning style and how quickly they disseminate and consume content. So if you think about the workload over a 15-week course for 3 credit hours being 35 hours, the weekly workload over a 7-week accelerated course would be approximately 19 hours a week. Now, that usually gets people thinking a little bit, so let's talk about that for a couple of minutes in terms of if you have questions about that workload. Do you feel like that's too much? Do you feel like that's appropriate? What are your thoughts on that? Because that usually seems to spark some conversation.
Well, the thing about it is you're usually taking fewer courses, so you'd like to think that you're spending the amount of time that you have allocated towards your coursework is not going to change, basically. I mean, unless a student is doing it one class by one class, in which case it's going to seem like doing 2 classes at one time or the work of 2 classes. But to me, if a student's taking 2 courses per term versus now 1 course per 7 weeks, it's more of a, we can call it accelerating, but it's more of a focused course. I mean, that's just my personal opinion.
And I would contend that's a pretty accurate assessment, yeah.
Having taught in lots of different time frames, to me, the big issue is that we can look and say, okay, we're cutting the time in half, so you double the amount of time in it. Somehow the student psychologically doesn't fully double the expectation. They might time and a half or something. I don't know if that makes sense, but you can condense 15 weeks down to 5. That means you work 3 times as fast. They might work, or 3 times as long or hard. They might work twice as long. I think getting them to understand that shorter time period doesn't mean we're just going to trim assignments or workload. It means we're just focusing, as Stuart said, on the material at a higher level. With some students, that's been an issue.
Okay.
It seems like the same thing's probably true for the faculty too, that we're gonna have, 2 times as much work or 3 times as much work. It's gonna be condensed into this short period of time. So I think one of the things we're trying to do is set up a schedule so that faculty don't have to teach these classes back to back or anything like that. So it'll be pretty intense for the 7 weeks, but then it'll go away for at least 7 weeks.
And I like the word that you used, focus, because it is kind of focused for everyone. It's focused for the student, it's focused for the faculty member. When you think about what you're going to do with your content, we'll talk about the design model here in a minute. You really are thinking about focusing your content and your students on those most important learning items in your course. And then around the focus, you build around the instructional materials, the kind of lectures you do, the kind of materials you introduce them to, video, audio, guest lecturers, that sort of thing. You build that foundation and you build the materials around that, in a way that allows your students to stay focused on the content you want them to stay on, but they still get as you give them as rich an experience as you can give them online that they might get in the classroom. So I think we kind of spoke to this just a minute ago, but why do you think it's important to keep student workload per week in alignment with the credits? If we're talking about this model as being the average, what would you see as the importance of keeping that alignment?
Legitimacy of the program, like courses of what we're doing. I mean, if we don't keep that in line, we're basically shortchanging the students and glossing over material.
Yeah, I would agree completely. And it's the content that you're going to teach. Most of you are teaching the same courses you're going to be teaching in this model, so you know your content. And based on AACSB standards, you shouldn't be making wholesale changes to your content in your course. That's not going to work. The students who are in this program should get a similar experience to the students that are in your on-ground or your other programs as well, based on those standards. So you should always keep that in mind. I also keep the credit hour or this formula in mind when you think about that. There will be some students, probably won't be a whole lot of students, but there probably will be a few who will take 2 courses at a time because for whatever reason they're motivated to do that. I was telling Nick the other day that it's, we see it as probably about 10 to 15% of the student population at each of the schools we work with. It's not a hugely significant number, but there will be some students who will do it. And for them, that's a 40-hour week for them, in addition to whatever they might be doing in their So, keep that in the back of your mind as you consider what you're doing with your course. I had an MBA instructor with another partner who was teaching a course, and he outlined to his students, set the expectation right off the bat that they were expected to spend 30 to 35 hours in the course each week for a 3-credit-hour course. It seems like a little high based on this formula, but again, your learning objectives and your content and the things that you need your students to learn are going to drive in part how much time they spend in your course each week. So think of that 19 as more of a minimum than an average. If it's 20, 21, 22 hours a week, I don't think that's a huge deal for the student. But if it starts creeping up toward 30, then think about ways that you might be able to, compress that content a little bit. And Joy and Terry are here on campus, and we're going to be here during the process as well, so we can help with ideas in terms of potentially transforming that content into something that would be a little more efficient for the student.
And it is always a balance, because as a faculty, you do have that sense of responsibility that the students need to know this information and they need to master these skills. So there's always a little bit of an internal struggle academically that you want them. Okay, they really need to know this and this and this, and suddenly you pile up a lot of stuff. We're academics. We like reading. We like textbooks, and so we say, oh no, they need to read this and this and this other article, and this just came in, and this is important, and so everything is important. That's the truth. So we're gonna have to make some critical decisions on what is viable versus everything. There's a lot of things to know, and that's why we're gonna build them into the program. But there's some decisions as you accelerate that you said, what is the essential skills based on my goals for the course? And another thing is that that table keeps you in check with not being very, that consistency on workload allow people to plan ahead. So if you're working, if you have a family, and if you're also studying, you do need to plan ahead. There's no way around that I would have done my PhD working full time if I couldn't plan. I have this time and this time to do my work related to school. So in the same lines, your students will have to do that. So if they know that they're going to have 20 hours, 25 hours of work per week, they can plan accordingly. If suddenly the assignment will take them 50 hours to complete, for that week, then that throws people ahead with their other responsibilities. So that's where that workload conversation, it's very enlightening.
Yeah, and I had a former boss who was getting her, and she would always set aside time on the weekends, but from like 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. she would do her coursework because she could spend the rest of her day with her family on Saturdays and Sundays. So it goes to that planning portion for the student. You want to be able to give them a consistent framework by which they can plan their 7 weeks so that they can, when they're devoting their time to your course, those 15, 20 hours a week, they're devoting their full focus to your course instead of worrying about what they have going on in their life. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So think about the courses you're teaching right now. Does anybody mind sharing what they're doing in their course right now in terms of workload, and whether you think there are challenges in terms of taking that workload from what you're doing right now into a 7-week model?
I think many of us are teaching summer school courses are 5-week modules.
Okay.
So, we may already be beyond that accelerated 7-week point, and maybe some happy medium between 5-week and a 15-week model.
Are there challenges you find in your 5-week course?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just trying to keep students focused and trying to keep them, you constantly hear, oh, this is a lot of work. I'm taking, this course in the summer versus longer in the fall, and you hear it from the students. So you have to, while making sure, or trying to make sure that they're getting the content that they need to get out of the course, trying to make sure that you're keeping their morale high and keeping them focused and keeping them working toward that end and not giving up, I guess, as many of them tend to do.
How do you do that right now?
I think communication is key, collaboration is key. Sometimes, especially in an online environment, students, obviously self-discipline is crucial in an online environment. But I think many times when students don't collaborate as much as necessary, they feel like they're on an island by themselves and they're lost. And so to engage them and to keep them working together, at the graduate level, especially in groups and in teams, I think that's a critical aspect of it. Constant communication. It's a challenge. I would hope just about everybody would agree that it's harder to teach an online course than it is a face-to-face course. And I personally think it is because of the challenge to communicate.
I think that is a challenge. I also think the challenge of just having the course ready, there's, what I tell faculty is there's a lot more planning involved in building an online course than there is in the seat course, because when you're in front of students and you're in the seat, you can read social cues, you can kind of adjust things on the fly to a certain degree. That's not to say that you can't adjust things in an online course, but you really have to have that foundation built before the course starts, so that if you have to make an adjustment based on current events, if you're teaching a marketing course and something really cool is happening in the marketing world right now and you want to add that to your course in that particular week, you have a placeholder discussion for that particular week, but if you're in your live course and something cool is happening and you want your students to know about it, you add that to your course during the week, and then you still have a development shell in the background where you still have your pristine course that's already built and you can just add to it every time you teach it. So it's really all about the preparation in terms of building the course. If your course is built and it's prepared and ready for the first day, then making those kinds of adjustments and being able to communicate with your students, it kind of frees you up to be able to do the kind of communication that you want to do with your students during those 7 weeks. So I want to talk about the design model for just a couple of minutes, and I want to be mindful of our time because I know we have another piece that starts in about 8 minutes. So design's actually an acronym for us. Distinguishing critical concepts, ensuring alignment, creating scale in your course, inventorying your existing content and chunking that content, giving priority to content, and then thinking outside the box. So, and a lot of these will go into the map that you'll that we hope you'll create for your course. And if you want to see a model of a map, I'm sure most of you have probably already seen this in here, but if you haven't, there's a model of a business map within the folder right there that you can take a look at for a business course. This kind of models what we've seen other programs do in terms of the content they put into the map. But, you know, when you're thinking about your course, you know, what are the most important takeaways that you want your students to get? We've kind of talked about that a little bit. You know, what are those things you want them to be able to learn 2-3 years down the road when it comes to you know, quantitative data, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to management? What are the things that they've really got to have so they're successful, you know, not just in your course, but in the real world? Because most of the students you're teaching already have jobs. They're coming and back and getting an MBA for a particular reason. It's usually because of job growth. It's usually because the salary goes up double when they get an MBA at their job. So think about the things you want them to take away and think about the ways that they're going to apply that in the workplace. Ensuring alignment. Obviously, you have your learning objectives in your course. You have your module learning objectives. As you map those out, this is a great opportunity for you to make sure that your content and your objectives are in alignment each week. Unfortunately, I've seen instructors who will speak to something in a particular week, and when they go to assess, they assess the students on something else. And it creates a lot of distance for the student, and it really kind of sets them up to fail. So the map is a great opportunity for you to look at your course at a high level and see where everything fits together. Make sure your alignment is clear with your assessments and your discussions each week, but it also might help you look at or see that maybe there's an overload of content in a particular week and maybe you want to balance that out, or maybe you see gaps in your content that you know that you see you need to fill. So the mapping process is a great opportunity for you to do that. Think about scale, and one of the instructors kind of mentioned efficiency a little bit. So think about the assignments you're doing now in your current courses and how those might translate into the online environment. You might not think they may translate into what you would do online, but between myself and Joy and Terry and the resources you have here, we can help you find ways to transfer that assignment into Canvas in a way that would still allow you to meet your learning objectives, would still allow your students to interact well with the content, but also might make your job in terms of grading a little bit easier. And I'll just say, I know we're going to talk about Canvas a little bit later on today. From my standpoint, in terms of being able to grade in the LMS, I think Canvas is the easiest of the LMSs because it has a speed grader function where you're right there in the grade book and everything pops up and you can grade papers and other content with the rubric right next to it. It makes the process of grading, in my opinion, a lot easier for faculty members and for coaches. So we'll talk about that a little bit. From a scale standpoint, you know, Canvas is equipped to help you in that regard in terms of just the process of grading. But you should also think about how your assignments, if you've got a large research project in your course, think about chunking that research project over the course of 5-6 weeks and giving the students different deliverables to meet each week. It gives them the advantage of building that project over time, and it gives you the advantage of grading pieces of that project each week and giving them feedback, so the end product is that much better for you when you grade it in week 6 or week 7. You're teaching these courses right now, you probably already have a lot of the content, you probably already have a lot of good ideas. Take a look at what you're doing right now and inventory it and see what things tie together. If you're teaching in a 15-week course, there may be complementary topics within your course that go together in a particular module that would make sense to put together. So think about those kinds of things as you're compacting your content. Give priority to content. We talked about you know, Caroline was talking about the things that we feel like our students need to know and what they have to know. You know, think about your content and give priority to those most important things. Doesn't mean that, you know, you're eliminating things, but you're giving priority to those things as you go through and you're building your map and you're building your course.
And challenge yourself, because when you're an expert in a topic, there are connections and there are assumptions that you make that are just make sense. Oh, come on, how can people not relate how this relates to this or understand this? So, but remember how you got there. So you didn't get to that expertise immediately. It's something you have to build upon from very concrete, very obvious activities, and suddenly you start making connections and you start making abstractions, and then you develop that expertise. So remember that to get to the expertise level you started with very simple, with very concrete, with very tangible activities, exercises, and you build upon. But do not stop challenging yourself or your students. So if you begin with let's define, let's discuss, let's apply, let's analyze, but not in an initial course. Initial courses need to be more fundamental, and you build upon that expertise. And this goes specifically for courses that normally, and some of you, I think back there, someone is teaching statistics. So those kinds of courses tend to be intimidating for students. And so you have to say, okay, how do I build that foundation so students can do all the things that now I know that are fundamental to do to the degree, to my career.
And I met a really interesting professor in an MBA program recently. In that vein of continuing to challenge yourself, he was teaching a finance course, and he really likes to be able to be up at the board in front of his students, doing his formulas, teaching, that sort of thing. And he had to make the move, the transition to online, and he kept looking for something that would allow him to do what he wanted to do in the online space, and he tried several things. Nothing really worked for him until somebody turned him on to something called Bamboo Pen. Any of you heard of that? So it basically, it allows you to write on anything and turn anything into a device where you can just, create formulas. And what he does is he creates these formulas in Bamboo Pen, and he puts them in Screencast-O-Matic, which is a screen sharing software. And now he can basically do his formulas in real time for his instructors, or for his students rather, within his online course. The really cool thing about this is when he found this, he was 73. And he's 80 now, and he's still teaching, and he's still using his Bamboo Pen. He was showing me the videos that he's made the other day. He's created like 150 of these things. But through trial and error, he found something that worked for him and worked for his students. So just because one piece of technology may not work in terms of helping you transfer an assignment or a project to the online space, keep looking. You can ask us, you can talk to Joy and Terry. We'll work with you to find something that will work for you if you're really struggling with taking an assignment that you're doing right now and moving it into the online space. And that kind of speaks to thinking outside the box. It took this guy a little while to find what he was looking for, but once he did, he just took it and he ran with it, and he seems to love it, and his students seem to love it too. I think this is as far as we'll go with this for right now. I know it's a lot to digest. I just, from the standpoint of the development process for these courses, Terry and Joy and I are still working that out, but our intention is to make sure that we're doing this collaboratively, and that we're putting together a process that will help you finish those courses in a manner in which they're ready to go the first day before they go to students. So, Joy, Terry, do you guys have anything to add just in terms of the process for course design at this point?
No, but I think like your idea of working through, trying to figure out what you're comfortable with. For me, it's social, so I meet my students, I do Zoom group meeting right off the bat. Hello, this is me. Visit a minute, and it seems for me the class goes better, but I'm a social learner, so that fit me. But it took a while, because students would, there was something lacking in the course. Maybe it was me, I don't know, but at this pace, I know it's very hard to take that time, but it was worth it in the end. Students did feel connected, So I like the outside of the box. Not everybody, you have to find that one thing that's just meets what you want to do to get your course feeling like you're teaching.
Yeah.
Rather than just grading.
For those of you who are teaching online right now, can you talk about the things you might be using in your course right now from a purely technological standpoint, in terms of, are you doing voice over PowerPoints, are you doing video, what kinds of things are you doing? Might be helpful to the faculty that haven't had the chance to teach in this format or in this accelerated format yet. Yes?
Well, I'm, like everybody, I use PowerPoint slides, and I do my own video because I know students like it.
I mean, I have other third-party video that I put on for students to go over, but then I also do my own because the comment from students typically they like to see the professor themselves teach, you know, especially the one who's offering the course. And I think on top of that, I started to incorporate a little bit of this WebEx for students to. I give them extra credit for them to come in and just talk to me, ask any question they have. I typically have a specific topic in mind. Just ask them, just come in, you know, and just, okay, ask any questions you have. Usually it's 1 hour, and at the beginning, it's only the good students who come, and then, you know, I really wanted to help the students who are struggling. So what I do is I start to give extra credit. I'll say, come, and well, the good students come all the time to get all the credit they want, but I want to reach the students who are struggling. So, and that helps some. I did the class presentation, I think it was like just 10 minutes, and I was surprised student, even a lady who was like she was in her mid-50s, she could do it. She presented it. It was, I mean, one lady presented it by the beach, you know, with a Mac and you can hear the wind and everything, but, you know, it works. And they like it because there's this connection, you know, connection with the instructor. So that's something I wanted to keep doing. And,
No, that's terrific. And in these courses, these students absolutely want to get to know you as an instructor. And it can be as simple as a 2 or 3 minute introductory video. This is who I am. Yeah, I had a boss who used to do her intro video for her course, sitting in a chair by her pool with her dog on her lap. And it was all about just connecting to them. You know, I'm a real person. I'm not some person in a box who you know doesn't have a personality. You know, this is who I am, and you know, I want to get to know you as a student just as much as you want to get to know me as an instructor.
And education is remember, never forget that education, independently if it's mediated through the online space or face-to-face, is essentially social and human. So it is something that you need to always remember, that on the other side, there is someone with great hopes that is taking extra time because they want an education, and they see you as that source of knowledge and wisdom to help them get there. So that connection, like you say, is instrumental to help, and there's lots of robust body of research that indicates that if you strengthen that, learning goes up the roof. And performance, and sense of accountability. And you know, that point that you gave them extra, I'm sure that it didn't really make a difference for the grade, but what a great motivator to help people do stuff. Suddenly they have 1 extra point and they go the extra mile for that thing that will not make a difference between an A and a B, but it makes a difference to them, that you rewarded them for the extra effort.
If you don't mind me asking, how are people recording lectures and videos? I mean, there's various ways to do it, but some may be doing it through Blackboard, and that's gonna be a change for us, so. Lydia, what are you doing?
I did mine over here in the room over
Okay,
the
so
summer
you
and
use the
have them
IV.
recorded, yeah.
So you have your own AV facility
I mean,
right over here.
right, this room itself.
We do it right here.
You're very lucky you have something like that. I work with a lot of partners that don't have anything like that at all. But you know, that's obviously an option. I've seen people use Screencast-O-Matic for that sort of thing, because it's not just a screen sharing. You can also use it for video. You know, there's obviously Camtasia, which is more of a screen sharing. You can just use the webcam on your computer and just record a video through whatever software you have on your computer. Zoom, actually, believe it or not, you can record yourself on Zoom and use that as a video tool as well. Yes?
I have a question. With me being fairly new here at UNCP, and I worked with a couple of partners in the past, and I don't know if I may be jumping the gun, but do AP offer any course templates or develop any course templates in Canvas to provide to these instructors as they transition from Blackboard to Canvas?
As a matter of fact, we do.
And we have one here too.
We'll look at that in a little bit. Absolutely. The reason we haven't built it and given it to you guys is because you don't have your instance yet. So, I mean, we've built graphic elements that we're gonna go over, and it's gonna be great to get feedback from you as a faculty member, and then from there we can build it in our instance so that when it's ready When you have your instance in Canvas and it's ready, we can just upload it right in there. So yes, we do. We absolutely do. We do that for courses and we do it for student orientation as well. So we can help you in that regard, absolutely. Any other questions about this portion?
I guess, question related to the module, at the bottom of the handouts, it says, please visit facultyecons.com, but there's like a login there.
Yeah, so we have a site called Faculty eCommons. You can kind of look at it as a 24/7, 365 professional development site. A lot of the things that we'll talk about today are going to be up at the Faculty eCommons. There are other research. I think he's talking about at the bottom of the.
Actually, at the bottom of the stapled.
It's at the bottom of
that one.
Yeah, right there. It's at the bottom. Actually, yeah, there you go. So yes, there is a username and a password for it. I think it's UNCP is the username in all caps, and then your mascot is the password. Raves.
Raves.
Small caps
No,
are.
they use the braves, I think.
Is it lowercase, uppercase?
Lowercase or uppercase
Lowercase.
for the password?
Yeah. And if that doesn't work, let me know, and I'll get the password for you during our break.
Nope, doesn't work.
Does not work? Okay. There's probably some sort of symbol or number at the end.
I will check and I will send it to you. I'm checking right now.
Okay. So, yeah, but yeah, we're actually in the process of revamping that site, as a matter of fact. It's gonna have a lot more content and a lot more interactivity as we go through the new version of that site. So, but yeah, you have access to that site, and we'll get you the password here shortly. Okay, so at this time, what I would ask you to do, I know a lot of you have your computers. If you haven't already fired them up, so to speak, if you could, that would be great, because we're gonna demonstrate a couple of things.
I'm registering everything.
Okay. Here in just a minute.
Oh, because your control.
Oh,
It only has two. Is this yours?
yeah, that's fine.
That's why I didn't remember. I was worried that you were not for presentation.
My wife is taking classes.
Did we turn that up? No, it's on.
I've had opportunity to observe a student.
Need us to get our IT support.
It's just, hang on just a second.
Person sets up stuff, and you have the person who would open it.
It's in power saving mode for some reason, and I can't seem to get it
You now have to
come
do
out
this
of it.
and read 4 chapters and take it. Every time for exam, just like that.
Ricarena, igual.